Champ of the Forecastle, Robert Ervin Howard. I don't have to have a man tell me he craves war. I can tell it by the set of his jaw, the glare in his eyes. So, when Sven Larsson raised his huge frame on his bunk and accused me of swiping his tabuksa, I knowed very well what his idea was. But I didn't want to fight Sven. Having licked the big cheese 3 or 4 times already, I see no need in mauling him anymore. So somewhat to the surprise of the rest of the crew, I said, "Sven, that's pretty crude. You didn't need to think up no lie to pick a fight with me. I know you crave to be champion of the sea girl, but they ain't a chance, and I don't want to hurt you." I got no further, because with a bull's belly he heaved himself off his bunk and come for me like a wild man. Gosh, what a familiar scene that was, the fierce, hard faces ringing us, the rough bunks along the wall, the dim light of the lantern swinging overhead, and me standing in the middle, barefooted and stripped to the waist, holding my only title against all comers. They ain't an inch of that forecastle floor that I ain't reddened with my blood. They ain't an edge of the upper bunk that I ain't had my head smashed against. And since I been a man grown, they ain't a sailor on the 7 seas that can say he stood up to me in that forecastle and beat me down. The lurching of the ship and the unsteady footing don't bother me none, nor the close space and foul, smoke-laden air. That's my element, and if I could fight in the ring like I can in the forecastle, with nothing barred, I'd be champion of something besides a tramp windjammer. Well, Sven come at me with his old style, straight up, wide open, with a wild swinging right. I ducked inside it and smashed my left under his heart, following instantly with a blasting right hook to the jaw as he sagged. He started falling and a lurch of the ship throwed him half under opposite bunk. There's no mercy asked, give or expected in a forecastle fight, it's always to the finish. I was right after him, and no sooner has he got to his feet than I smashed him down again before he could get his hands up. "Let's call it a day, Sven," I growled. "I don't want to punch you no more," but he come weaving up, spitting blood and roaring in his own tongue. He tried to clench and gouge, but another right hook to the jaw sent him down and out. I shook the sweat out of my eyes and glared down at him in some irritation, which was mixed with the satisfaction of knowing that again I had proved my right to the title of champion of the toughest ship afloat. Maybe you think that's a mighty small thing, but it's the only title I got and I'm proud of it. But I couldn't get on to Sven. Me and him was good friends ordinarily, but ever so often he'd get the idea he could lick me. So the next day I looked him up between watches and found him sulking and brooding. I looked over his enormous frame and shook my head in wonder to think that I had gotten no further in the legitimate ring than I have, and I can lay out such incredible monsters as Sven so easy. 6'4" he was in his socks, and his 245 pounds was all muscle. I can bend coins between my fingers, tear up decks of cards and twist horseshoes in two, but Sven's so much stronger than me there's no comparison. But size and strength ain't everything, Sven, said I, how come you forever got to be fighting me? Well, at first he wouldn't say, but at last it come out, I bane got girl at Stockholm. She bane like me pretty good, but they bane another faller. His name bane Olaf Eriksson and he own fishing smack. Always when I go out with my girl, he bane yump on me and he always lick me. I tank if I ever lick you, I can lick Olaf, so you practice on me, hey? I said. Well, Sven, you never will lick me nor Olaf nor any man which can use his hands unless you change your style. Oh, of course, you're a bear cat when it comes to fighting ignorant dock-wallopers and deckhands which never seen a glove and can't do nothing but bite and gouge. But you see what happens when you get up against a real fighting man. Sven, said I on a sudden impulse, like I usually do, far be it from me to see a deep-water seaman get beat up regular by a Baltic fish grabber. It's a reflection on the profession and on the ship. Sven, said I, I'm going to train you to lick this big cheese. Well, I hadn't never give much thought to Sven before. Only in a general way you can't pay close attention to every squarehead which comes and goes aboard a trading ship, but in the weeks which followed I done my best to make a fighting man of him. I rigged up a punching bag for him and sparred with him between watches. When him or me wasn't doing our trick at the wheel or hoisting the deck, or scraping the cable or hauling on a rope, or trimming sail or exchanging insults with the mates, I tried to teach him all I knowed. Understand, I didn't try to make no boxing wizard out of him. The big slob couldn't have learned even if I could have taught him. And I didn't know how myself. I ain't a clever boxer. I'm a rough and willing mixer in the ring, but compared to such rough house scrappers as Sven, I'm a wonder. The simple ducking, slipping and blocking, which even the crudest sluggard does in the ring, is beyond the ken of the average untrained man, and as for scientific hitting, I never heard of it. They just draw back the right and let it go without any aim, timing nor nothing. Well, I just taught Sven the fundamentals: to stand with his left foot forward and not get his legs crossed, to lead with his left and to time and aim a little. I got him out to the habit of swinging wild and wide open with his right all the time, and by constant drilling I taught him the knack of hooking and hitting straight. I also give him a lot of training to harden his body muscles, which was his weak spot. Well, the big Swede took to it like a duck takes to water, and after I'd explained each simple move upwards of 1,000 times, he'd understand it and apply it, and he wouldn't forget. Like lots of squareheads, he was slow to learn, but once he had learned, he remembered what he'd learned. And his great size and strength was a big asset. Bill O'Brien says, "Steve, you're training the big sap to take your title away from you." But I merely laughed with great merriment at the idea. Sven had a wallop like a mule's kick in either hand, and when he learned to use it, he was dangerous to any man. He was pretty tough, too, or got so before I got through with him. He wasn't very fast, and I taught him a kind of deep defensive crouch like Jeffries used. He took to it natural and developed a surprising left for the body. After 6 months of hard work on him, I felt sure that he could lick the average alley fighter easy. And about this time we was cruising Baltic waters and headed for Stockholm. As we approached his native heath, Sven grew impatient and restless. He had a lot more self-confidence now, and he craved another chance at Olaf, the demon rival. Sven wasn't just a big unwieldy slob no more. Constant sparring with me and Bill O'Brien had taught him how to handle himself and how to use his bulk and strength. A few days out of Stockholm he had a row with Mushy Hansen, which was 200 pounds of fighting man, and he knocked the Dane so cold it took us an hour and a half to bring him to. Well, that cheered Sven up considerable, and when we docked, he said to me, "I go see Sigrid, my girl, and find out if Olaf Bane in port." He Bane hang out at day Fisherman's Tavern. I go past with Sigrid and he come out and yump on me, like usual. Only this time I Bane lick him. Well, at the appointed time me and Bill and Mushy was loafing around the Fisherman's Tavern, a kind of bar where a lot of tough Swedish fishermen hung out, and pretty soon, along comes Sven. He had his girl with him, all right, a fine, big blonde girl, one of these tall, slender yet well-built girls which is overflowing with health and vitality. She was so pretty I was plumb astounded as to what she seen in a big boob like Sven. But women is that way. They fall for the dubs and pass up the real prizes like me, for instance. Sigrid looked kind of worried just now, and as they neared the tavern, she cast to apprehensive eye that way. Well, they was abreast of the door when a kind of irritated roar sounded from within, and out bulged what could have been nobody but Olaf the Menace, herself, in person. There was a man for you. He was fully as tall as Sven, though not as heavy. Tall, lithe and powerful he was, like a big, blond tiger. He was so handsome I could easily see why Sigrid hesitated between him and Sven, or rather I couldn't see why she hesitated at all. Olaf looked like one of these here Vikings you read about which rampaged around in old times, licking everybody. But he had a hard, cruel eye, which I reckon goes with that kind of nature. He had some fellas with him, but they stayed back in the doorway while he swaggered out and stopped square inches front of Sven. He had a most contemptuous sneer, and he said something which of course I couldn't understand, but as Mushy later translated the conversation to me, I'll give it like Mushy told to me and Bill. "Well, well," said Olaf, looking for another licking, "eh? Your deep-sea boyfriend is back in port looking for his usual trouncing, eh, Sigrid?" "Olaf, please," said Sigrid, frightened. "Don't fight, please. I warned you what would happen to him," said Olaf, "if you went out with him." At this moment Sven, who had said nothing, shocked his bold rival by growling, "Too much talk, put up your hands." Olaf, though surprised, immediately done so, and cut Sven's lip with a flashing straight left before the big boy could get in position. Sigrid screamed, but no cops was in sight and the battle was on. Olaf had learned boxing someplace, and was one of the fastest men for his size I ever seen. For the first few seconds he plastered Sven plenty, but from the way the big fellow hunched his shoulders and surged in, I had no doubt about the outcome. Sven dropped into the deep, defensive crouch I taught him, and I seen Olaf was puzzled. He himself fought in the straight-up English sparring position, and this was the first time he'd ever met a man who fought American style, I could see. With Sven's crouch protecting his body and his big right arm curved around his jaw, all Olaf could see to hit was his eyes glaring over the arm. He battered away futilely at Sven's hard head, doing no damage whatever, and then Sven waded in and drove his ponderous left to the wrist in Olaf's midriff. Olaf gasped, went white, swayed and shook like a leaf. He sure couldn't take it there, and I yelled for Sven to hit him again in the same place, but the big dumbbell tried a heavy swing for the jaw, half straightening out of his crouch as he swung, and Olaf ducked and staggered him with a sizzling right to the ear. Sven immediately went back into his shell and planted another battering ram left under Olaf's heart. Olaf broke ground gasping and his knees trembling, but Sven kept right on top of him in his plodding sort of way. Olaf jarred him with a dying effort swing to the jaw, but the months of punching had toughened Sven, and the big fellow shook his head and leaned on a right to the ribs. That finished Olaf. His knees gave way and he started falling, grabbing feebly at Sven as he done so. But Sven, with one of the few laughs I ever heard him give, pushed him away and crashed a tremendous right-hander to his jaw. Olaf straightened out on the boardwalk and he didn't even quiver. A low rumble of fury warned us, and we turned to see Olaf's amazed but wrathful cronies surging towards the victor. But me and Bill and Mushy and Mike kind of drifted in between, and at the sight of 3 hard-eyed American seamen and a hard-eyed Irish bulldog, they stopped short and signified their intention of merely taking Olaf into the tavern and bringing him to. At this, Sven, grinning placidly and turning to Sigrider with open arms, got the shock of his life. Instead of falling onto his manly bosom, Sigrider, who had stood there like she was froze, woke up all at once and burst into a perfect torrent of speech. I would have given a lot to understand it. Sven stood gaping with his mouth wide open, and even the rescue party, which had picked up Olaf, stood listening. Then with one grand burst of oratory, she handed Sven a full-armed, open-handed slap that cracked like a bullwhip, and bursting into tears, she ran forward to help with Olaf. They vanished inside the tavern. What did she say? What's the idea? I asked. Burnt up with curiosity. She say she bane through with me, Sven answered dazedly. She say I bane a brute. She say she ain't bane want to see me no more. Well, he'll haul me, said I profanely. Can ya beat that? First she wouldn't choose Sven because he got licked by Olaf all the time. Now she won't have him because he licked Olaf. Women are all crazy. Never mind, old-timer, said Bill, slapping the dejected Sven on the back. Anyway, you licked Olaf to fare you well. Come along, and we'll buy you a drink. But Sven just shook his head sullen-like and moped off by herself, so after arguing with him unsuccessfully, me and Bill and Mushy betook ourselves to a place where we could get some real whiskey and not the stuff they make in them Scandinavian countries. The barkeep kicked at first because I give my white bulldog, Mike, a pan full of beer on the floor, but we overcome that objection and fell to talking about Sven. I don't savvy dames, I said. If she gives Sven the bounce for beating up Olaf, why'n't she give Olaf the bounce long ago for beating up Sven so much? It's Olaf she really loves, said Mushy. Maybe, said Bill. And maybe he's just persistent. But women is kind-hearted. They pities a poor boob which has just got punched in the nose, and as long as Sven was getting licked all the time, he got all her pity. But now her pity and affections is transferred to Olaf, naturally. Well, we didn't see no more of Sven till kind of late that night, when in come one of our squarehead shipmates named Fritz to the bar where me and Bill and Mushy was, and said he, Steve, Sven he say maybe so you bane come down to a place on Holmer Street. He bane got something to show you. Now what could that Swede want now? Said Bill testily, but I said, oh well, we got nothing else to do. So we went to Holmer Street, a kind of narrow street just out of the waterfront section. It wasn't no particularly genteel place, kind of dirty and dingy for a Swedish street, with little crummy shops along the way, all closed up and deserted that time of night. The squarehead, Fritz, led us to a place which was lighted up, though the shutters was closed. He knocked on the door and a short fat Swede opened it and closed it behind us. To my surprise I seen the place was a kind of third-rate gymnasium. There was a decrepit punching bag, a horizontal bar and a lot of barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, in fact, all the lifting weights you could imagine. There was also a wrestling mat and, in the middle of the floor, a canvas-covered space about the size of a small ring. And in the middle of this stood Sven, in fighting togs and with his hands taped. Who you going to fight, Sven? I asked curiously. He scowled slightly, flexed his mighty arms kind of embarrassed-like, swelled out his barrel chest and said, You could have bowled me over with a jibboom. Me? I said in amazement. What kind of joke is this? It bane no joke, he answered stolidly. Mine friend Knut bane owned this gym and teach wrestling and weightlifting. He bane let us fight here, Knut, stocky Swede with the massive arms and pot belly of a retired weightlifter, give me a kind of apologetic look, but I glared at him. But what you want to fight me for? I snarled in perplexity. Ain't I taught you all you know? Didn't I teach you to lick Olaf? You ungrateful. I ain't got no grudge for you, Steve, the big cheese answered placidly. But I tank I like be champion of das sea girl. I got to lick you to be it, ain't it? Sure. Bill and Mushy was looking at me expectantly. But I was all at sea. After you've worked 6 months teaching a man your trade and built him up and made something out of him, you don't want to undo it all by rocking him to sleep. Why are you so set on being champ of the sea girl? I asked irritably. Well, said the overgrown heathen, I tank I lick you and then I can lick Olaf, and Segrider she like me. But I lick Olaf, and Segrider she give me das gate. Das pain your fault, but teach me to lick Olaf. But I ain't blame you. I like you fine, Steve, but now I tank I be champ of das sea girl. I ain't got no girl no more, so I got to be something. I lick Olaf so I can lick you. I lick you and be champ and we be good friends, yeah, but I don't want to fight you, you big mutton head. I snarled in wrathful perplexity. Then I fight you on the street or the Forecastle or wherever I meet you, he said cheerfully. At that my small stock of temper was plumb exhausted. With a bloodthirsty howl I ripped off my shirt. Bring on the gloves, you square-headed ape. I roared. If I got to batter some sense into your solid ivory skull I might as well start now. A few minutes later I was clad in a dingy pair of trunks which Canute dragged out of somewhere for me, and we was donning the gloves a set lighter than the standard weight, which Canute had probably got as a present from John L. Sullivan or somebody. We agreed on Bill as referee, but Sven being afraid of Mike, made me agree to have Mushy hold him, though I assured him Mike wouldn't interfere in a glove fight. There was no ropes around the canvas space, no stools nor gong. However, as it happened, it wasn't needed. As we advanced toward each other I realized more than ever how much of a man Sven was. 6 feet 4, 245 pounds all bone and muscle. He towered over me like a giant, and I must have looked kinda small beside him, though I'm 6 feet tall and weigh 190 pounds. Under his white skin the great muscles rolled and billowed like flexible iron, and his chest looked more like a gorilla's than a human's, but size ain't everything. Old Fitz used to flatten men which outweighed him over 100 pounds, and look at what Dempsey and Sharky used to do to such like giants, and I'm as tough as Sharky and can hit as hard as either of them other palookas. Even if I ain't quite as accurate or scientific. No, I has no worries about Sven, but I got over being mad at him and I seen his point of view. Sven wasn't sore at me, nor nothing. He just wanted to be champ of his ship, which was a natural wish. Since his girl give him the air, he wanted to more than ever to kind of soothe his wounded vanity, as they say. No, I cooled down and kind of sympathized with Sven's point of view, which is a bad state of mind to enter into any kind of a scrap. They ain't nothing more helpful than a good righteous anger and a feeling like the other bird is a complete rascal and absolutely in the wrong. As we come together, Sven said, no rounds, Steve, we fight to das finish. Yes, all right, I said with very little enthusiasm. But, Sven, for the last time have you just got to fight me? His reply was a left which he shot for my jaw so sudden like I just barely managed to slip it. I come back with a slashing right which he blocked, clumsy but effective. He then dropped into the deep crouch I taught him and rammed his left for my wind. But I knowed the counter to that. Having seen pictures of the second Fitzsimmons Jeffries riot, I stepped around and inside his ramming left, slapping a left uppercut inside the crook of his right arm, to his jaw, cracking his teeth together and rocking his head up and back for a right hook which I opened a gash on his temple with. He gave a deafening roar and immediately abandoned his defensive posture and come for me like a mad bull. I figured, here's where I end this scrap quick. Like always. But in half a second I seen my error. Sven didn't rush wide open, flailing wild, like he used to. He come plunging in, bunched in a compact bulk of iron muscles and fighting fury. He hooked and hit straight, and he kept his chin clamped down on his hairy chest and his shoulders hunched to guard it, half crouching to protect his body. Even the rudiments of boxing science he'd learned, coupled with his enormous size and strength, made him plenty formidable to any man. I don't know how to tin can and backpedal. If Jeffries himself was to rush me, all I'd know to do would be to stand up to him and trade punches until I went out cold. I met Sven with a right smash that was high, stopped him in his tracks. Blood spattered and he swayed like a big tree about to crash, but before I could follow up, he plunged in again, hitting with both hands. He hit and he hit and he hit. He throwed both hands as fast as he could drive one after the other and every blow had all his weight behind it. Out of the depths of his fighting fit he'd conjured up amazing speed. It happens sometime. I never seen a man his size hit that fast before or since. It was just like being in a rain of sledgehammers that never quit coming. All I could see was his glaring eyes, his big shoulders hunched and rocking as he hit a perfect whirlwind of big glove-covered clubs. He wasn't timing or aiming much, hitting too fast for that. But even when he landed glancing like, he shook me, with that advantage of 55 pounds. And he landed solid too often to suit me. Try as I would, I couldn't get in a solid smash under the heart, or on the jaw. He kept his head down, and my vicious uppercuts merely glanced off his face, too high to do much good. Black and blue bruises showed on his ribs and shoulders, but his awkward half-crouch kept his vitals protected. It's mighty hard to hammer a giant like him out of position, especially when you're trying to keep him from tearing off your head at the same time. I bored in close, letting Sven's blows go around my neck while I blasted away with both hands. No, there was little science used on either side. It was mostly a wild exchange of sledgehammer wallops. In one of our rare clinches, Sven lifted me off my feet and throwed me the full width of the room where I hit the wall. Wham! Like I was going on through. This made Bill, as referee, very mad at Sven, and he cussed him and kicked him heartily in the pants, but the big cheese never paid no attention. I was landing the most blows and they rocked Sven from stem to stern, but they wasn't vital ones. Already his face was beef. One eye was closed, his lips were pulped and his nose was bleeding, his left side was raw, but, if anything, he seemed to be getting stronger. My training has toughened him a lot more than I'd realized. Blim. A glancing slam on my jaw made me see plenty of stars. Wham. His right met the side of my head and I shot back halfway across the room to crash into the wall. Long ago we'd got off the canvas, we was fighting all over the joint. Sven was after me like a mad bull, and I braced myself and stopped him in his tracks with a left hook that ripped his ear loose and made his knees sag for a second. But the Swede had worked himself into one of them berserk rages where you got to mighty near kill a man to stop him. His right, curving up from his hip, banged solid on my temple and I thought for a second my skull was caved in like an eggshell. Blood gushed down my neck when he drawed his glove back, and, desperate, I hooked my right to his body with everything I had behind it. I reckoned it was when I cracked his rib, because I heard something snap and he kind of grunted. Both of us was terrible looking by this time and kind of in a dream like. I saw Canute wringing his hands and begging Bill and Mushy and Fritz to stop it. I reckon he'd never saw a real glove battle before and it was so different from lifting weights. Naturally, they, who was clean goggle-eyed and yelling themselves deaf and dumb, paid no attention to him at all, and so in a second Canute turned and run out into the street like he was going for the cops, but I paid no heed. For the first time in many a day I was fighting with my back to the wall against one of my own crew. Sven was inhuman. It was like fighting a bull or an elephant. He was landing solid now, and even if them blows was clumsy, with 245 pounds of crazy Swede behind them, they was like the blows of a pile driver. He knowed only one kind of footwork going forward. And he kept plunging and hitting till the world was blind and red. I shook my head and the blood flew like spray. The sheer weight of his plunges hurtled me back in spite of myself. Once more I tried to rock his head up for a solid shot to the jaw. My left uppercut split his lips and rattled his teeth, but his bowed neck was like iron. In desperation I banged him square on the side of the head where his skull was hardest. Blood spurted like I'd hit him with a handspike, and he swayed drunkenly. Then he dropped into a deep crouch and shot his left to my midriff with all his weight behind it. Judas. It was so unexpected I couldn't get away from it. I was standing nearly upright and that huge fist sank into my solar plexus till I felt it banged against my spine. I dropped like a sack and writhed on the floor like a snake with a busted back, fighting for air. Bill said later I was purple in the face, like I was looking through a thick fog. I seen Bill, dazed and white-faced, counting over me. I dunno how I got up again. I was sick. I thought I was dying. But Sven was standing right over me, and looking up at him. A lot of thoughts surged through my numbed and battered brain in a kind of flash. The new champion of the Sea Girl, I thought. After all these years I've held my title against all comers. After all the men I've fought and licked to hold the only title I got. All the cruel punishment I've took, all the blood I've spilt, now I lose my only title to this square head that I've licked half a dozen times. Like a dream it all come back, the dim-lighted, smelly, dingy forecastle, the yelling, cursing seaman and me in the middle of it all, the bully of the forecastle. And now never no more to defend my title, never to hear folks along the docks say, "That's Steve Costigan, champ of the toughest ship afloat." With a kind of gasping sob, I grabbed Sven's legs and climbed up, till I was on my feet, leaning against him chest to chest, till he shook me off and smashed me down like he was driving a nail into the floor. I reeled up just as Bill began to count. and this time I ducked Sven's swing and clinched him with a grip he couldn't break. And as I held on and drew in air in great tracking gasps, I looked over his straining shoulder and seen Canute come rushing in through the door with a white-faced girl behind him, Segrider. But I was too near out to even realize that Sven's ex-girl was there. Sven pushed me away finally and dropped me once more with a punch that was more a push than anything else. This time I took the count of 9, resting, as my incredible vitality, the wonder of Manny's the sporting scribe, began to assert itself. I rose suddenly and beat Sven to the punch with a wild right that smashed his nose. Like most sluggers, I never lose my punch, no matter how badly beaten I am. I'm dangerous right to the last second, as better men than Sven Larsson has found out. Sven wasn't going so strong himself as he had been. He moved stiff and mechanical and swung his arms awkwardly, like they was dead. He walked in stolidly and smashed a club-like right to my face. Blood spattered and I went back on my heels, but surged in and ripped my right under the heart, landing square there for the first time. Another right smashed full on Sven's already battered mouth, and, spitting out the fragments of a tooth, he crashed a flailing left to my body, which I distinctly felt bend my ribs to the breaking point. I ripped a left to his temple, and he flattened my ear with a swinging right, rocking drunkenly like a tall ship in the trades with all sails set. Another right glanced off at the top of my head as I ducked, and for the first time I seen his unguarded jaw as he loomed above me where I crouched. I straightened, crashing my right from the hip, with every ounce of my weight behind it, and all the drive there was in leg, waist, shoulder and arm. I landed solid on the button with a jolt that burst my glove and numbed my whole arm. I heard a scream. I seen Sven's eyes go blank. I seen him sway like a falling mast. I seen him pitching forward. Bang. The lights went out. I was propped up in a chair and Bill was sloshing me with water. I looked around at the dingy gym, then I remember. A queer, sad, cold feeling come over me. I felt old and worn out. After all, I wasn't a boy no more. All the hard, bitter years of fighting the sea and fighting men come over me and settled like a cold cloud on my shoulders. All the life kind of went out of me. Believe me, Steve, said Bill, slapping at me with his towel. That fight sure set Sven solid with Segrider. Right now she's weeping over his busted nose and black eye and the like, and hugging him and kissing him and vowing everlasting love. I knowed I was right all the time. Canute run after her to get her to stop the bout. Gosh, the Marines couldn't have stopped it. Mushy clean chawed Mike's collar in two, he was that excited. Say, would you thought a slob like Sven could have made the fightin' man he has in 6 months? Yeah, I said listlessly, scratching Mike's ear as he licked my hand. Well, he had it comin'. He worked hard enough. And he was lucky having somebody to teach him. All I know, I learned for myself in cruel hard battles. But, Bill, I can't stay on the Sea Girl now, I just can't get used to being just a contender on a ship where I was champion. Bill dropped his towel and glared at me. What you talking about? Why, Sven's the new champ of the Sea Girl, licking me this way. Strange, what a comeback he made just as I thought he was going down. You're clean crazy, snorted Bill. By golly, a rap on the dome has a funny effect on some skates. Sven's just now coming to. Mushy and Fritz and Canute has been sloshing him with water for 10 minutes. You knocked him stiff as a wedge with that last right hook. I come erect with a bound. What? Then I licked Sven? I'm still champion. But if he didn't knock me out, who did? Bill grinned. Don't you know no man can hit you hard enough with his fist to knock you out? Swedish girls is impulsive. Segrider done that with an dumbbell.